This is East Carolina Offensive Coordinator Donnie Kirkpatrick. We are talking one of my favorite things, Pirate football, on the Sports Objective.
My heart is purple and gold. I'm a pirate down to my soul, and I don't back down, not at all. Find out when the cannons explode. From the sidelines down to the post, put it down like not even close. All out to the last whistle blow. From the flag with the soul and crossbones. Everybody stand up, get your hands up. Let the team know that we got they back. This is our house, this is our town, our time. Record 19 copy.
How about those friggin' pirates?
Welcome into the Sports Objective. We appreciate everyone tuning in whenever and however you're watching or listening, whether it's right now live on YouTube and Facebook or pretty much anywhere podcasts can be heard. You can find us. Today we're previewing the Pirates game against Tulsa and the final game of the regular season. The Golden Hurricane will come to Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium, and right now very excited to be joined by the play-by-play voice of the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, his initial appearance on the show, and that is, of course, longtime voice, Bruce Howard. Bruce, we appreciate your time this afternoon.
Hey, no problem, Bubba. Thank you for having me. And where have you been? I've been waiting for years to be on this show, you know.
Yeah, so we finally got our act together, Bruce. But no, yeah, we appreciate you, and we know you've probably been enjoying a little vacation. Appreciate you getting back with us and look forward to having you on the show, whether it's talking Tulsa football or men's basketball here moving throughout 2023 and into the future. But, taking a look at this program, obviously there was a significant amount of success under Coach Montgomery, but the administration chose to go in another direction. Kevin Wilson coming in, a veteran, a guy who's been in the coaching business for 3.5+ decades now, all the success at Ohio State as a coordinator, same thing at Oklahoma. And he also had, although the numbers aren't great, he got the Indiana program to respectability as a head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he's a guy that's come in. He's got a lot of energy. He's a veteran guy, so he's been through the wars before. He's hired what I consider to be a really nice dynamic staff. And what I mean by that is the good combination of one guy, young guys that are the vim and vinegar guys, and then the old veterans that have seen it before. So I think it's a really good mix in the staff, and I'm excited about what they've been able to do. They've done some really nice things through the spring, and then through, of course, recruiting, and now coming here in the everybody wants to call it fall camp. I call it preseason camp because at 105 degrees last week, it didn't feel like fall.
I'm with you. I've kind of done the same thing myself. I've started to say fall camp a few times. I say it's definitely not fall yet. But taking a look at his staff, tell us what you can. I know the only staff member I'm very familiar with, without taking a look at things, is Steve Spurrier Jr. I know he's your OC.
Yeah, he's the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach, the son of Steve Spurrier Sr., of course, the old ball coach. And so he's coached under his dad for, 9 or 10 years at various places, including South Carolina, but also some other places. He was under Mike Leach at Washington State and also at Mississippi State. So he's learned under a couple of pretty darn good gurus. So I really have been impressed with him so far. Good family man. He has 7 kids. He has triplets, and he's got twins, and then 2 singles, if you will. He has joked about the fact he has 7 kids, and had he gotten some quads, he'd have broken the record or hit for the cycle or something like that. So at any rate, he's a really good guy, good family man, understands the game. I'm not going to anoint him as a quarterback whisperer, but you got to figure he knows quarterback play. And so he's really terrific. And I think he's going to do a good job with what Tulsa will have this year, which is a fairly young, quarterback room. So you're familiar with him. And I'm not going to go through the entire staff, but Chris Polizzi is the defensive coordinator. Now, they didn't have one initially. They had one that was there briefly and then left. And then Chris has come on since the advent of spring ball, and he's done a really nice job. Coach Wilson did I thought a really good thing in terms of, he didn't panic when he had to go search for a defensive coordinator. He got the right guy. They went through spring ball without him, and boy, he just picked the ball up running as soon as he got here, and everything seems to be running really, really smooth. there are several other, assistant coaches that I've been very impressed with. Ron Burton is a really experienced guy on that defensive line. And Ryan Switzer may be a guy that some fans might remember as a Dallas Cowboy. It's not long ago that he returned a punt something like 89 yards in a Sunday night football game for the Dallas Cowboys. So he's the wide receiver coach. And what I love about a lot of these guys, and even so-called older guys, they have great energy, and especially a guy like Ryan Switzer. I mean, he's not only just a couple of years removed from being in the NFL, but he has great energy, and without question, Bubby, you know how important this is. He's got some street cred with these young guys, no question.
Yeah, no doubt. I recall seeing that. Now that you bring up Ryan Switzer, I remember him making plays for the North Carolina Tar Heels in the return game, as well as a receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a lot of things, and was kind of in that Danny Amendola mode, and really. And may have been even more athletically gifted because he had great speed and had a good career, and then he kind of got hurt a little bit, and now he's in the coaching business, and we're glad to have him.
You talk about Coach Wilson and Steve Spurrier Jr. having to figure some things out at the quarterback position. I know Davis Brin moved on to Georgia Southern, and so tell us about Braylon Braxton and then the other contenders for this job and the other guys in that room.
Well, Braylon Braxton really finished the year strongly. I mean, he had a fabulous game against Houston. It was the final game of the year. Tulsa came in 4-7. I'm not saying they didn't have anything to play for. I mean, if you're a Division I athlete, you should be ready to play every game. But what I'm saying is they weren't going for a bowl game and all that. And this young quarterback sparked the team coming from behind at Houston in the final game of the year. And he was absolutely spectacular. He's a guy that he's probably an underrated thrower. He can sling it, but he also does a great job of keeping plays alive with his feet, keeping his eyes downfield to make a big play. And he also, he also can run it. He also can make people miss and run it. And that's the one thing that you don't see when you're talking about spring ball and then in the preseason camp is, as soon as they touch the quarterback, that's it, play's over. There are going to be some plays that we haven't seen here in the preseason made by young Braylon Braxton, where he breaks a tackle and continues on and makes something happen. He did that right at the end of the first half of the Houston game. I don't want to say it was a broken play, but it was a read option play. And he pulled the ball and ran something like 35, 36 yards for a touchdown and basically weaved through the entire Houston defense. And, the Houston defenders aren't chopped liver. They usually have some pretty good talent back there, and scored a touchdown. And if you saw that young man come off the field after that play, he was literally gleefully skipping, jumping in the air and skipping as he ran back to the sideline. And it was just fun to watch because it was just unfettered joy. And that's the kind of stuff you want out of, one of your leaders or out of one of your young players, just a really animated player. And, hopefully, he'll be able to make the basic plays as well, but he can sure make some spectacular ones. And then I know you
return Watkins and Presley at the skill positions, but tell us about some of the running backs and receivers that he'll have the opportunity to distribute the ball to.
Yeah, Anthony Watkins is a returner, wasn't a factor last year, and a guy that really has a lot of talent. Deneric Prince right now is in the Kansas City Chiefs camp as a free agent. He was the leading running back last year, and he looks like he's going to make that team and has really done some nice things. So you had a pretty talented guy there as the number one. But Jordan Ford and Taj Gary is a transfer from Virginia Tech, and he's a guy that only played 3 games and then got hurt. He's got a lot of potential as well. Bill Jackson is a guy that can make plays. And then you kind of mentioned a wide receiver, Swiss Army knife type guy, Braylon Presley, who's a transfer from Oklahoma State. And he's still young. He's only going to be a redshirt sophomore coming in. He had 1 year at Oklahoma State. But he's a guy from a nearby town, Bixby, south of Tulsa, highly recruited. A little bit undersized, but if he gets out in space, man, he just makes people miss. So he's one of those guys that'll be an X factor. Not sure where you're going to see him, but when you see him out in the field, you better believe they're going to try to get the ball to number 5. So he's very talented. The leading receiver coming back is Malachi Jones. He was their 3rd leading receiver a year ago, had 37 catches for nearly 500 yards. Tulsa had two really good top line receivers that graduated, and one of them's the all-time leading receiver, Keelan Stokes, which I know ECU fans have seen him through the years. So
remember the name well.
yeah, so they do have to rebuild a little bit in the wide receiver core, but they do have some guys, and they have some young guys, and you know how that is. The young guy that hasn't played a whole lot has 2 catches in his career. Well, now as a sophomore, as a junior, he's got to step up, and I think they've got some guys that can do that. But that's primarily your skilled position, and if you recall the offense that Philip Montgomery ran for the University of Tulsa, and compare that to Kevin Wilson's offense, obviously everybody's a little bit different, but this Tulsa team, I suspect, will throw more to the tight end than the Tulsa team from a year ago did. In the past, the tight end basically was an H-back, a blocking back type guy, and the tight ends might catch 5 passes in a year. I think that's going to be a little different with Kevin Wilson. He'll move players to places that he thinks they can be effective, and I think tight end is one of those positions. So we'll see what happens there.
In preparation for this conversation, I was reading up on things on the offensive line. It said that the pass protection left a little something to be desired a year ago. So tell us how things look in the trenches for Tulsa.
Well, and Tulsa lost a couple to the portal during that period of time, frontline guys. But I like what they've done so far. In the fall, in the preseason camp, and they've got some guys that have had some experience. Ty Marks, Kai Leon Herbert, transfer from Miami. Will Farniok is the center. He's a veteran, so he comes back for his final year. And Bryce Bray and Daryl Simpson are guys that have seen the bullets fly as well. And Bryce Bray, a transfer from Oklahoma State, could be a big factor this year. So they do have some guys that have been kind of through the wars, but I don't think there's any question that, they have to continue to up their game. And I think they are, early on in preseason camp, if you will. Defense is usually a little ahead of offense. And so they, after the first practice, coach was asked what stood out. And Coach Wilson said, and this was pretty funny, Coach Wilson said, well, what stood out is we can't throw it and we can't catch it. You didn't ask me what stood out positively, and to me, that's what stood out. And of course, obviously since then it's gotten better. So, but that was pretty funny, and I think it's just natural to have that happen, and offense catches up, and I think they'll be fine on the offensive line.
I'd say that's good news defensively, though. I know a season ago, not the best for the Golden Hurricane on that side of the ball, and I did see that you do return 3 or 4 key pieces in the trenches, though.
Yeah, there's some guys, and again, I think in this day and age, and previously Tulsa had run a 3-man front, so they rotated 9 guys in, for those 3 positions. So what you end up with the next year is you end up with guys that have actually seen some playing time. So guys like Owen Ostrowski and Jaden Simon, Joseph Anderson, Von Troy Malone is a young defensive end who really should be good. He only saw a few snaps last year, but 3 or 4 or 5 of those guys have seen some time, and that's always good. And I think the scheme will be, I'm sure, a little bit different than a year ago. I'm envisioning that they'll have different numbers of fronts and that kind of thing. So I really like what I see from those guys. And then they got some pretty darn good transfers that came in that I think are going to be pretty good, that are coming not only on the defensive line, but also in the linebacking core. And the linebacking core took a little bit of a hit. So I think they'll be fine, though.
Who are some of those incoming linebackers? I know that there were significant losses there, as you mentioned. And I don't know if I'm recalling correctly, I knew that you had at least 2, if not more, transfers from Oklahoma State on the defensive side.
Yeah, and you had a transfer, Justin Wright, who led Tulsa in tackling the last couple of years. He went to Oklahoma State. So it's like, it's almost like it was a trade, right? So Julian Simon, he's shown up pretty well early on. He's from USC. Colton Smith transfers in. He's a Division II player that'll play his final year. He's come in and made a lot of plays so far. And again, we're only talking about 3 or 4 practices, so it is still young. But he's a guy that comes in from Division II, and I think 2 years ago led all of Division II in tackles. Last year, a little bit less in his in his senior year, and now he's got the grad year. So he's a guy that's come in and done some nice things. And then you have some guys like a Mitchell Culkin, who has played a lot, playing at linebacker, Brian Johnson, and some others. But you fill in those gaps. You're not sure what you have sometimes when they come out of the portal, but I think Kevin is pretty happy with what he's gotten in that linebacking position from the portal.
East Carolina really upgraded in the secondary, much more length and speed and athleticism for the Pirates. Tell us about the Golden Hurricanes on the back end.
I'd say that could be one of the strengths of the defense, at least experience wise, because at nickel with a guy like Jace Oliver, LJ Wallace has played at strong safety. You've got Kendarin Ray, who's been a safety for a very long time, and he has his final go around. So all of those guys have played frontline safety for Tulsa. Reggie Ellis and Tyree Carlisle have played at corner and have started at corner. Dante Burton, is a transfer from a year ago, and Kewan Parker is a transfer in from Arkansas, and he looks like he can make plays. So I think it's one of the deeper areas, that secondary. And again, when you run with those three safeties, you do have to have numbers. When you got that nickel safety and you have five guys back there, you do have to have numbers. And I think Tulsa done a pretty good job of bolstering what they had with some new guys.
The kicking and punting aspects of the special teams were, really quite a struggle for the Pirates at times a season ago, and probably cost us a game or two. But I know Tulsa had a very experienced kicker. He has since moved on or graduated. So how are the Golden Hurricane looking there at kicker and punter?
Yeah, I mean, at the place kicking position, Tyler Tipton is a young man that's kicked a little bit for Tulsa. He would appear to be the heir apparent, although there's some other guys. Scott Sanford looks like he may be the punter, but you never know with the fights that go on. Tulsa did lose their frontline punter from a year ago, and that young man moved on to, I'm trying to think, out west somewhere. Maybe Cal or Stanford, I can't remember. But at any rate, that's going to be a growing pains thing, or at least you hope you grow through preseason camp and get it together. But yeah, that'll be a little area of newness for Tulsa. That doesn't mean they'll be failing in that particular area, but certainly there's no question they'll be working hard at getting that right. And and take away from the deep snapper either. Caleb Matthews did that a little bit last year, and he's gonna be back. So I mean, they'll be they're continuing to work hard at it.
As this program approaches that season opener against Arkansas Pine Bluff, just talk about what Coach Wilson has really been. What are 2 or 3 major things that you've heard from being around the program, be it in spring ball or throughout the summer, that he's emphasizing?
Well, one thing he emphasized from the very outset was discipline, just making sure that these guys, and this is not only on the field, but off the field as well. He's really stressed the academic aspect of it. Do not miss classes, go to class. He's been very, very, very hard-nosed about that. You got to go to class. You've got to be disciplined. I think that's probably, one of the things that I think has improved. Now, Tulsa, I think a couple of years ago led the nation in penalties, and last year they were very high on the list. So look for that, hopefully, to go down. I think with discipline and that sort of thing, usually the penalties go down, as well. So I think those are 2 really big things that he brings, has brought to the table. And then, there's no question that when you have a new staff, there's a new sort of vitality, there's a new energy. And that's not to say that the old coaching staff didn't have energy, but there's always that newness, and that's always something that's very positive. And like I mentioned before, he's very energetic. He's got something going all the time, and that's the way a head coach. That's kind of the life of a head coach, and he's used to it before at Indiana. He's used to it at Ohio State, and I think he's kind of hit the ground running. I'm really looking. I'll be honest. I'm just looking forward to what's going to happen, because I think anymore in college athletics, and talking about football specifically, but in college athletics, more now than ever, Bubba, you don't know what you got. You don't know what's going to happen with the NIL and with the portal and all that. Sometimes you just don't know how it's going to get pieced together. And good thing is we got a veteran guy at the helm, Kevin Wilson. He's used to piecing things together. So hopefully the product will be great starting on the 31st of August when we take on Arkansas Pine Bluff. But then we go to Washington and have a game against Oklahoma. So it's not an easy non-league schedule. Hopefully they can get through that and get ready for American play.
Yeah, we were discussing that off the air. The Sooners coming to Chapman Stadium there on the Tulsa campus. So I know this certainly isn't the first time the Sooners have come to town, but it's very, very interesting. East Carolina is playing a game at App State, a smaller venue, certainly no more than 40,000, upper 30,000s, and it's something that the very high demand for that ticket, and the App State administration opted to charge $130 for that ticket. How much demand, I can only imagine on what it's like for the Sooners visit to Tulsa.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a lot of interest, obviously, in Oklahoma, here in the Tulsa area about OU, and there's no question. But like any game that ECU has against maybe a P5 school, you urge your fans to come out. Hey, make sure our fans buy those tickets and get out so that it's not a sea of crimson, for the game. So it's definitely something that folks have on their mind. And I'm sure tickets are going fast for that one. Now OU obviously had they had a 6-7 last year, 6-7 season last year. And it's probably not up to their standards, but they are ranked number 19 coming into the preseason. So I'm sure they'll be ready to go. And I guarantee you Kevin Wilson's team will be ready to go.
Oh, no doubt. Tulsa would love nothing more than to turn up the heat some more on Coach Venables and staff. But taking a look at the conference schedule, something that really stood out to me is how challenging the road slate is. Those 4 conference games that are on the road are pretty much against the upper half of the league, at least in terms of where they're projected preseason, against the likes of Tulane, East Carolina, SMU, and Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, that's not going to be easy. And on the flip side of that, and I'm not saying these are easy touches, but Tulsa's got a chance to get off to a good home start when they get Temple. I'm not saying that Temple is terrible. I'm just saying that's not like last year when Tulsa started with Cincinnati, with the league schedule. So they've got a chance to get off to a pretty good start in league play. First 2 home games would be Temple and Rice, and like we often say here, every game's winnable and every game's losable. But certainly those first 2 home games are winnable games, and you hope you're able to have some success in the Florida Atlantic game in between. So I think they got a chance to get off to a good, a pretty good league start. Now that said, I'm not the one that throws and catches and blocks and tackles and all that. So we'll see what the young men do. But it's like any season, as you know, Bubba. You just can't wait. You just can't wait to see him play.
Visiting with Bruce Howard, the play-by-play voice of the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, and a couple more things for you, Bruce. Final thing about the American, with this new look American, what's your take on things, not only on the football side, but also men's basketball and the other sports?
Well, guess what? Florida Atlantic is a Final Four team, huh? Coming into our league. So basketball-wise, there's obviously some positives. And North Texas have been very good. Football-wise, again, these guys, they get X number of scholarships too. So I'm sure, Florida Atlantic will be a good, UTSA is obviously a really good program football-wise. They came in, as one of the favorites, underneath Tulane. And then, Tulane has had that turnaround, and I'm sure they'll continue to do well under Willie Fritz. So I like the new look league. I think there's some chance. I think there's a chance for almost any team in this league to think of themselves as, we can contend in this league, and we've got a chance to be good. Not that any team before didn't feel that way, but when you had UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati. You had a hard time thinking, if you were down at the bottom of, how we're going to beat all of those teams, So I think there's a chance for almost any team in this league to at least think, we could be that. We could be the Tulane this year. We could be the team that does it and gets it done and gets to a championship game and that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of exciting.
Certainly. I heard a couple of coaches reference that at media days. Hey, We don't like where we're picked, but at the same time, Tulane was picked 7th a year ago, and we saw what they did, winning 12 games and winning the Cotton Bowl and beating Southern Cal. Final thing for you, save the most important topic for last. Unfortunately, back in mid-February, February 10th to be exact, East Carolina lost its longtime play-by-play voice, Jeff Charles, who we had on the show several times, and just such a tragic loss and way to lose Jeff. After he had defeated cancer, back 10 plus years ago, and seemingly doing well, so active. But what are your memories of Jeff? Because I know he and you had a very close friendship.
Yeah, he's one of my best friends. Was one of my best friends in the business. Always, very positive. Always a guy that friendly, gave you advice, all of that sort of thing. And I know, he's a little older than me, and I wouldn't say that he was a mentor, but I did learn a lot of things from him. Other guys like Tulane's Corey Glore, he was an actual mentor, and Corey has all the greatest things in the world to say about Jeff. But Jeff was just such a class act, and obviously he bled purple. He was a guy that loved ECU. You could tell, and yet, you know what? He was a really good and fair broadcaster. And when I say fair, I mean fair to both sides. If somebody else made a good play, he'd recognize that. So not only was he a great broadcaster, but he was a better person. And it's one of those things where you kind of remember where you were when you heard the news. And I was in a hotel room in Orlando. I think we were getting ready to play UCF the next day, and I get a phone call or a text, I think it was, that said that he had I think that the text said he had passed away. Yeah, it said he did not make it. And it was just like, there was nothing else on my mind for the rest of the day, for the rest of the night, getting ready for the game the next day. And we do have a fairly close-knit bunch in the American in terms of the broadcasters. And so there's a little email thread that I created a few years ago. And immediately I sent out an email thread to all of the other broadcasters in the league. And boom, my phone was blowing up. Ping, 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 oh no, just everybody reacted the same way as you might expect that I did. And it was a true loss. And what a great guy. And, it was just a shame, as you mentioned, that he beat cancer. He got through all of that, still very healthy. In fact, if I remember correctly, he passed away after working out at the Tulane gymnasium during the run through the night before. I mean, so it's just sad. And obviously, I think, there are a lot of things that you can remember about him. What you have to remember is he loved ECU. He loved his family. And I guess the good thing about it is you'll always have his voice on tape reminding you how good he was.
No doubt. Have certainly listened to a lot of the classic calls from Jeff Charles over the last several months. Well, Bruce, certainly appreciate your time this afternoon. Before we let you go, tell folks how they can, tune into the broadcast and throughout the season, and then also how they can find you and follow you on social media.
Well, we have a podcast of our own called it's called Eye of the Hurricane Podcast. So if you ever want to dip into that, that's good. I'm at Voice of Kane on Twitter, at Voice of Kane on Twitter. If you want to, follow me on Twitter, that would be great. Our broadcasts are on Learfield. And of course, as ECU fans, I'm sure know that, the network does a great job of producing and allowing fans to drop in. I'm trying to think of what they call it, the network that carries the games, and you can get them on your phone. Varsity Sports Network. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Varsity Sports Network has been great because, my 96-year-old dad in Central New York can get his phone, tap into it, and listen to a ball game. So the Varsity Network is a great way, and it's really been a way that I've had a chance to listen to Jeff and some other broadcasters from our league. Well, if I'm not doing a ball game and I have a chance to tap into the Tulane or the SMU broadcast, I'm able to do that on the Varsity Sports Network. So that's a great way to listen to games as well if you want to hear the other announcers in the league. So those are ways to get a hold of us, and certainly look forward to coming out to Greenville. I'm just hoping that they don't move that date back to Thanksgiving. I'd be
Yeah.
okay with that game staying at Saturday on the 25th. You know what I mean?
Definitely agree with that. Definitely makes it a little bit easier for fans or the opposing team making that trek across the country like yourselves. But have an excellent 2023 season, and definitely would love to meet you when you come to Greenville here in a few months.
Bubba, stop in, come into the booth and say hello. It's always, a pleasure to talk with the great folks in Greenville, and a pleasure to talk with you. And if you do tip your head in during the game, I might put you to work stats or something,
I hear you. That's what Dave Richmond, one of my co-hosts, jokingly refers to me as the stats guy for the podcast. But
there you go.
But appreciate the visit, and we'll probably, if your schedule allows, we'll try to have you back on for a brief 10 or 15-minute visit game week.
Absolutely. Be my pleasure.
Take care, Bruce. Appreciate it.
All right.
There you as we're here on a Wednesday. Before we get out of here and wrap up this edition of the show, I wanted to preview tonight's content. Tonight we're going to be having the debut episode of Just Another Sports Podcast. I'll be sitting in for Stevie Fly, who unfortunately lost his father earlier this morning. So normally this would be Stevie Fly and Kyle Barber. But tonight it will be myself and Kyle. We'll be joined by Andrew Bays, the All-American punter for the Pirates back in the 90s. Bays will join us, and we'll obviously talk Pirate football as a whole, but we'll really hone in on the special teams and take a look at the Pirate kickers, the punters, return men, and so forth headed into the 2023 season. We'll also take a look at season opening games for the Pirates. We'll have a top 5 list, so we'd love to have you join us. Chime in on social media, on Facebook, YouTube, and let us know some of your favorite season opening games, whether it's the 2008 Classic against Virginia Tech in Charlotte, the 99 game against West Virginia in Charlotte. Maybe it was that Duke game to open the Skip Holtz era at Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium, or one of several other season openers down through the years for the Pirates. Also, be sure to follow us on social media, on X at eSportsOBJ. Like and follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow us at The Sports Objective and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Taking a look at our programming for the upcoming weeks and throughout the football season. Every Monday night, you can join former East Carolina strength and conditioning coach Jeff Connors on Absolute Empowerment. Coach Connors knocking it out of the park with all these interviews, but the last 2 shows have been tremendous. George Kuntz, Robert Jones, definitely go back and check those out if you have not already listened. Each and every Tuesday night throughout football season, we'll have the Pirate Preview. On the recent editions of the Pirate Preview, it's been much like this show where we're previewing the opponents. So definitely go back and check those out. We have now previewed, I want to say it's 9 out of the Pirates' 12 opponents. We still have Charlotte, which will be tomorrow, and then SMU and Michigan to preview as we wrap up our look at the ECU opponents for 2023. We'll also have Sonny and Semenza each and every Wednesday night throughout the season. Jay Sonhalter, former Pirate tight end and current ESPN Plus color analyst, will join former Pirate linebacker Matt Semenza, and they'll talk about some of the top games around the nation, specifically as it pertains to the betting odds. I've already mentioned Just Another Sports Podcast each and every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock with Stevie Fly and Kyle Barber. On Thursday nights, you'll have the Inside Slant, which is a college football preview show. We'll take a look at some of the top games of the week, be joined by beat writers, play-by-play voices, and more from around the country. A Pirate's Life for Me will be each and every Friday at noon. On the most recent episode, we caught up with Alex Turner, former Pirate defensive lineman. And on this coming Friday's episode, we'll be joined by longtime Pirate fan and Pirate Club member, Zach Daugherty. On Saturdays throughout football season, we'll have sights and sounds from Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium or wherever the Pirates are playing. And then each and every Sunday night, presented by L&K Custom Homes, you'll have the Pirate football playback. Appreciate Kevin Walker and KK, a loyal supporter of the program, back for a 3rd year as our title sponsor. But for this episode, that will do it. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you real soon here on the Sports Objective. Take care, everyone, and as always, go Pirates.
Heart is purple and gold. I'm a pirate down to my soul, and I don't back down, not at all. Find out when the cannons explode. From the sidelines down to the post, put it down like not even close. All out to the last whistle blow. For the flag with the soul and bones. Everybody stand up, get your hands up. Let the team know that we got their back. This is our house, this is our town, our time. Record 19, copy that. Everybody in the stands go bananas, scream loud, but don't hold back. Every foot, every yard, every first down, every touchdown with the cannons blast. Get it on, get it all, get the wave going like a